On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 2019. We're going to be taking a look at the Zombies, and they're going to be performing She's Not There. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So, this video that we're about to take a look at isn't the one that I was sent. The one that I was sent just had the original audio on a TV performance of the guys back in the 60s, but I wanted to look at something live, and I just happened to come across this performance from their induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is from 2019. So it took a while for the guys to get in there, but thankfully they are now. And we're just going to take a look at this because there is so much to point out about it, given the fact that we're talking over 50 years, 55 years since the original release. But let's get the guys up on screen and see how they get on.
But no one told me about her, the way she lied. No one told me about her, how many people cried. But it's too late to say I'm sorry. How would I know? Why should I care? Please don't bother trying to find her. She's not there.
And there we have it. There was just about everything in that performance. When we're talking about vocally, something that I want to touch on, the fact that on the original record, when you listen to Colin's original vocal that he laid down, and it's Colin Blunstone here, by the way, on lead vocal, he had an airy quality to that original where he just went into falsetto, and you could hear that it was a double-tracked kind of falsetto in order to make it sound a bit stronger on the record. But here, Colin has more vocal technique in this performance than he did all the way back in the 60s, which is just crazy to think of. I mean, this is an A4, by the way, you vocalists out there. We're talking about top end of the male tenor range. So he's getting into this super clean head voice, not falsetto. So it's just massively impressive. I mean, for any guy to sing this would be really difficult because it is way up there in the male tenor range. Unless your voice naturally sits a lot higher, then you might be okay with it. But Colin just is nailing these A4s every single time, and in the verse, you can just hear the way that he flips up into his head voice, and we never get that breathy sound of falsetto. So it means that he can now start to apply a wider vibrato to it because he's got control of that note and his vocal cords. What happens with falsetto is, because you're allowing a lot of air through your vocal cords, the note doesn't last for as long, because the thing that allows you to make a note to last for a longer length of time is the fact that you're not expelling all of your air, you're holding it behind your vocal cords and just letting out a little bit at a time. Whereas with falsetto, your vocal cords break apart, you still get enough sound from the vocal cords to get the note, but you hear the air as well because there's so much air going through those vocal cords. So it means that you can't hold a long note with falsetto. So it's amazing to hear that change in technique, but also the control, just being able to fly up there in his head voice to an A4, and you can see on his face, you can see in his neck that he's not straining. This is just fantastic vocal technique. The other thing that we have across the whole band is that ability to hold down a solo section if required on their instruments, because they will have that top technical ability. And when we're talking about that ability, we get a couple of sections here where we get Rod Argent, who's just melting your face with his organ solo, and we also get Tom on lead guitar, which is a really cool, Tom Toomey, a really cool lead guitar section that we have. We will get the guitar out in a second to go through the chords of this song, also have a little look at that guitar solo. But the thing about the compositions back in the 60s is the fact that they lasted for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. They weren't very long, but the amount that you got crammed in there was just insane. You got so much bang for your buck with the old compositions, the old songwriters. They just gave you chords that you weren't necessarily expecting. And this is a great example of that, because we have our A minor going over to a D minor, but we also get the major forms of those chords. Talking about the feel, the drums, I mean, pretty much this whole performance and that original song, you can listen in to each instrument, the bass as well. Hear where the bass is going throughout this whole song. It is so impressively all over the place, but it all just works. It's so progressive, considering that it's just 2 or 3 minutes. So you can listen out for each individual instrument throughout this song and just focus on that and just appreciate the amount of ability that goes into playing that live, but also just approaching it from that songwriting perspective of how to make it so interesting, not only with the melody over the top, with the great vocal over the top, but the progression and the story of the song. So when talking about the feel of this song and the way that it changes, I've just rewound the video so that we can take a look at the verse, because what you want to be listening out for here is the snare of the drum kit, because with a standard drum pattern, you'll have your snare on 2 and 4. Whereas here we have a snare on 2, but then 3 and 4. So it means that we're going, if I'm playing it straight, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is my snare that I'm pretending to hit on my guitar. And with this song in the verse, we go 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like that. So the effect that this has is almost like feeling like you're tripping up on something, because that's what's happening. You're expecting the snare to come in on 4, but it's come in slightly earlier, so it's stopping you from where you think it's about to come in, and we get that little and 4 before the 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it's that little trip. That's what's changing the feel of it. When we then get into the pre-chorus and the chorus, we are so straight that it feels like now you're moving forward unobstructed, whereas you've been tripping before. So it's a really cool change in feel. And you don't need to know about music theory or know about music at all to feel the change. It's just something that happens to you. It feels like you are just stumbling before you get into the chorus, which is great because it means that that chorus now flows, it stands out even more. But let's have a listen to it and see if you can spot that 1, 2, 3, and 4 where that snare comes in. Let's have a listen. And at this point, we're just straight ahead now. 2 and 4 is where our snare's coming in.
Please don't bother trying to find her. She's not there. But let me tell you about the way she looked, the way she acted, the color of her hair. Her voice was soft.
And listen to how straight the beat is now. I think we've even got a bit of open hi-hat just coming in on every beat of the bar here. And the guitar is even playing, I'm a little bit dirty here because there is a slightly dirtier guitar solo in terms of the tone later on, but we have this, it's literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it couldn't be straighter in the chorus. So you get a fantastic contrast between the verse and the chorus. So just jumping into the chords very briefly, we'll just busk it out. And pretty much we've got, in the verse, we haven't really got any guitar in this live performance. But if you wanted to throw some in, you're probably going to want to throw in the A minor and try and keep that feel that we get from the drum kit in terms of coming in on 2, 1, 2, 3, and then jump in on the 3 and 1, 2, 3, and 4. Kind of like that. And there I was going over to pretty much a D5. So I'm not hitting all of that D chord, kind of like that. And you'll find that when we go over to the F, it's a straight jump on 3. So we get this 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1, 2, 3, kind of like that. So you just have to be on your toes for when that F comes in, but you'll pretty much get there. Because there's no guitar in the verse, in terms of really highlighting the major, you don't have to, but I believe when you then relate it to the keys, we do have the major in there, so you can go all the way across if you want to, but it's very much understated in the verse, so you don't want to get too carried away with it. So when we get into the pre-chorus, we then have our D down to D minor, into an A minor, into the E7th. I think here we have Tom going to that E7th up here with the kind of raised ninth on the B string. He actually gives it a little bit of vibrato as well. Then going back down to the A minor again, and then D minor. Oh, and now you're going to get into your C, and I'm supplying the G on the low E string as well. You can just play a standard C if you want to, like that. A little bit out of tune, but kind of like that. And then we go into the E7th again. And it's more of a straight build up here. Now we go straight with the A minor, D, A minor, F. Straight with the rhythm as well. and ending with the A major. So we're just going to jump into the solo very quickly and have a look at what's going on. And, I mean, we have got a Santana-esque tone here, and I know that Santana has his own version of this song. So, we've got a lot of gain on the sound, but we've got this little slide up, A minor pentatonic shape 1 here, but we're sliding out of it on the G string. Kind of like that. Might be an extra pick in there. Okay, actually, we might be, instead of playing our down here on the 7th fret, we've got our bend, because we've got a little bit of bending going on, but also fretting the high E string, 15th fret, so that's why you'll need to be in that different position rather than being on the high E string like I was before. But as long as you do the bends there, you'll be fine. Okay, and things are getting technical now. Oh. We've got this bend. And a nice little run here. Okay, so we've got this. That's the kind of thing. You have to keep your pick organised in order to get that in there. We then have a little run down. It might be a kind of that kind of thing running down. Probably, I'm not going to sit down here and work out all the notes, but it's just a little descending run that we get into. And then that's going to be it. So we're then jumping into the key solo. If your face wasn't melted enough, the solo in general, I mean, we have got a lot of technique in there. Don't let that fly under the radar, that there is a hell of a lot of technique in Tom's solo here, so you won't just be able to play this off the bat. You have to practice for a hell of a long time, for probably a few years, but the way that it's been thrown together, it isn't just playing a million notes all the time. There's melody to it, which is the most important thing. I do want to include just a brief bit of history behind the Zombies at the end of this video. They entered a competition and really got their big break by winning that competition, which was sponsored by London Evening News. But that was way back in the early 60s, mid-60s, actually 1964 is when they signed to Decca Records off the back of winning that competition. And this song is the single that they released. She's Not There just turned into a monster hit straight off the bat. And it was released in the middle of the year here in the UK, and it went to number 12 in the charts. But then by Christmas time, it had really caught on over in the USA, and there it got to number 2 in the charts, sold over 1 million copies, and off the back of that success, they then travelled over to the USA. So their next monster hit was Tell Her No, and this got to number 6 in the US charts. They released their album, which was called Begin Here, in 1965, and that was called Begin Here in the UK. But over in the USA, it was called The Zombies, and at this point, they weren't getting as much success as they wanted, so they moved record labels and signed with CBS Records. So they then started working on that album called Odyssey and Oracle, and interestingly, the name of that album is spelt that way because it was a spelling mistake by the art teacher and the guy who designed the album cover. Because it was all done manually, he wrote that in incorrectly. So that was the name of the album that they were working on in 1967. But by the end of 1967, they actually went their separate ways, so it meant that the album wouldn't be released until after that in 1968. And for that album, they recorded it at Abbey Road, and the budget, I think, probably went mostly on Abbey Road, and it was something that Chris White mentioned, or it might have been Rod who mentioned about not having enough money to get session musicians in for the album. So they used John Lennon's Mellotron that was left in the studio and just used used that to fill in the sound of the album. Interestingly, in 1969, Time of the Season became a huge hit in the USA, but it had been released as a single the year before. So it was a bit of a slow burner, but it did eventually get to number 3 in the US charts. But the guys didn't get back together and declined regrouping for shows at that point, which meant that around the USA, there were bands going around which were fake bands, and they called themselves the Zombies, and there was a particular company called Delta Promotions that dealt with fake bands. There was also a fake version of the Animals going around the USA, but anyway, they had 2 fake zombie bands that were going around the USA because the actual band weren't playing, but people, the general public, didn't know that they weren't playing, so they'd go to watch the Zombies not realising it's not the actual Zombies playing. In 1988, it even went as far as a fake band trademarking the Zombies name. In 1989, a few of the guys got back together and recorded an album which they released in 1990, and that was called The Return of the Zombies. And it wasn't until 1999 that Rod and Colin would play again together on stage, because Rod was playing a charity gig and saw Colin in the audience and invited him up on stage, and they got a very positive response. So that really set the stage for them getting together and doing more projects together. Just to give a quick mention of Paul Atkinson as well, one of the founding members of the band, of that original lineup. Sadly, he passed away in 2004. But in terms of the Zombies, they are still going. I mentioned about Rod and Colin getting back together on stage. So if you are here in the UK and you want to go and catch the Zombies live, you can do next year. They're going to be playing in 2022, and they're going to be playing at a venue that I've played at before called The Fleece in Bristol. So if you are anywhere close to Bristol, check them out, because that's a really cool venue. It's quite intimate as well, so you'll get a great view of these guys playing live. But thank you guys so much for suggesting the Zombies to check out. Even though this wasn't the video that I was sent, I thought it was a great one to take a look at. Let me know what you guys think. Keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. And if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!